Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, 5 Considerations for Enterprise Mobile Applications. My name is Jason Armstrong, and I'm joined today by my partner in crime, Jeff Stonebrook. As you can see on the next slide here, between Jeff and I, we have close to 40 years of experience in enterprise application development. Over the past several years, we've been working on a variety of problem types, including mobile, application modernization, as well as IT and business strategy. And so what we wanted to do today was talk to you a little bit about several things that you should consider when you're looking at your mobile applications and your mobile strategy. On the next slide, just a little bit about Summa. It's really our philosophy that technology with the proper vision and execution can truly transform a business. We build software solutions that will deliver strategic value to a company's overall goals, and we focus on how technology can make a positive impact on the bottom line for an organization. We're a very passionate team that helps transform businesses really by making software work. And we lead with innovation, we optimize business processes, and we drive customer engagement for companies that truly embrace the strategic value of technology. And so on the next slide, we want to share with you today some of the 5 things that we see as being very important for mobile applications in an enterprise. We're actually framing these 5 topics as questions, and you can see them on your screen right now. We'll be starting off with why is IT and business unit alignment essential? We'll also be talking to you a little bit about what design thinking is, and then how important is integration. And then we'll be talking a little bit about mobile application platforms and some of the important things that you need to know and understand, especially if you're supporting BYOD or multiple device platforms. And then finally, and not as an afterthought, we'll be talking about security. So next slide, thank you. So diving in, why is alignment essential? In a very, very short sentence, common purpose creates focus. Without alignment, nothing else actually is going to work. Most application projects are going to be doomed to failure. So alignment is very, very important, and we'll actually talk a little bit about that more in a second. But first, we want to ask you a quick poll question. It'll be flashing up on your screen here in a second, and it's what business benefits do you want from mobile? So if you guys can take a few seconds and reply, we'll dive right back in. Okay, so hopefully everyone has had a chance to answer the question, and now we'll be talking a little bit about alignment and some of the reasons why it's essential. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons why alignment is essential is in the mobile world, mobile applications require agility. They have very, very short development runways. We're talking about projects in weeks or months, not months or years. They're also very highly focused applications, and they tend to be task-oriented. You'll hear us talk about this probably a few times, but it's a statement worth repeating, is that when you're thinking about mobile applications, you should be thinking about more bite-sized chunks. Your ERP today is consists of several modules, but it's still a very single application. In the mobile world, you would actually, if you were building an ERP for mobile, you would build it as probably a series of 20 or more apps, and breaking them up into things that are much more, as we said before, focused on what's going on. The other key thing too is these are systems of engagement. While you may have a number of systems of record involved, The idea is the mobile applications are the systems of engagement. This is what people are going to be interacting with, and it's very important that you get this right from the start. In order to be able to do that, it requires a number of things to be aligned. In particular, IT and business need to be in agreement on what is essential. So, next slide. So I'm throwing around this word alignment, and a lot of folks have their own meanings for this. So just to kind of take a quick step back and talk about what we mean by alignment. When we're talking about IT and business alignment, it's making sure that both organizations are in lockstep, that there is an understanding between them and a shared and common purpose. And what you'll see here is a couple of good ways of being able to understand what actually goes into alignment. So for instance, communication, having understanding, shared learning. IT helps the business understand what IT is looking at and looking for in a solution. Meanwhile, the line of business is also sharing what they're looking for and what their needs are. So this notion of measurements. One, how do we understand how well we are aligned? What kind of KPIs or service level agreements or benchmarking is going on in order to understand how aligned are we. Management is also very critical. This is how we plan and prioritize, and then not only that, but also budget. Different things that are important to both groups. Excuse me. Then there's also partnership. It's not that, basically it's a symbiotic relationship. The line of business needs IT in order to be able to achieve the goals, especially with a mobile application. Meanwhile, if there was not a line of business or a business need for this, then IT would not be building the applications. So there is the notion here of shared goals, and there's also perception and trust. Something that we frequently hear from both IT and from the line of business are that IT is often perceived as a bottleneck. Line of business is asking for new features and functionality or new applications. Unfortunately, IT has been overloaded with requests, and so they have to prioritize those. And so it may take several months before someone's request can be gotten to. With good alignment, we always know what's most important, and we're working towards that goal. But it's also helping to understand those perceptions that when IT is coming back saying, hey, something's going to take us 6 months to get to, people understand why. And it's not IT throwing up roadblocks. And the last part here is also skills. And one of the things that we see with mobile is it allows companies to be innovative, disruptive. It also allows for flexibility. At the same time, something that we often see is there's a shift in where power is located. Basically, we want to be able to provide tools and solutions that allow for centralized management, but also allow for decentralized innovation and creativity to occur. So this is kind of what we're all talking about when we're talking about alignment and making sure that both IT and business are actually aligned. And all of this leads towards that agility. Next slide. So this is from Harvard Business Review. This was actually written about a decade ago, and this is adapted from there. What we're illustrating here is in a lot of organizations, a number of decisions are made by IT, and without necessarily a lot of input from the business. And then in some cases that these decisions are made completely by the business with no input from IT. And when you have that happening, that's definitely an example of misalignment or non-alignment. And so what we have here are a few examples of questions that you should talk to your senior management about. One, what is the strategic role of IT? If IT is making these decisions, then you'll end up with too much spending, not enough return. If line of business is making those decisions, almost no budget. And then they wonder why they're not getting some of the support they need. Not going to read all of these to you, but the idea here is that what we're trying to illustrate is that decisions should be made together, and that these should not be made in a vacuum. We've seen on a number of occasions when this does happen, and what we end up with is a lot of situations where what has been built is not what is requested by the business, or it's very different. Oftentimes, if there is strong communication between both the line of business and with IT, we can actually start to see and have good conversation and negotiation and give and take about what is important. So, for instance, something we'll talk about here in a little bit is the notion of native versus hybrid applications. Many folks in marketing are adamant that they want everything to be a native application. Meanwhile, making everything native often has an increased cost and maintainability associated with it. So there needs to be that discussion and that open and honest communication about what's actually needed. Next slide. So what we're sharing with you right now, this is actually screenshots from one of our customers. This is PPG's. This is their digital killer platform, mobile application is out there. This application is actually a great example of how alignment can work together. This is a joint effort between Summa and the line of business and PPG's IT department. Able to build this application based on the needs of marketing, but then also being able to support a wide array of functionality, as well as create something that's actually brandable for all of the various paint brands that PPG owns. And without that alignment, this application never would have been possible. Next slide. So one of the, so now I've kind of talked a little bit about alignment. This kind of leads very nicely into design thinking. And what is design thinking, you may be asking? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. The idea behind design thinking is being able to think about what is needed and looking at it from a variety of different angles. First and foremost, looking at it from the view of the customer, and then building out from that, and then adding in the other needs. And so it's very much a holistic look at what is actually truly needed by the customer and the market. So creating something that is market viable. And if you're deploying applications internally, this also still is critical. One of the things that has happened is expectations have increased with use of mobile. Things that people were willing to accept as being okay or adequate in the old web and desktop world, not so much anymore. People have become so accustomed to their mobile devices that and how things work. So thank you for this one, Apple. But they've just made it. They've upped the ante, and everyone has to step up their game to build user-friendly and applications that make sense. So this goes also beyond simply making pretty screens. This also digs very much into how people interact and what the overall goal is. So this is also looking at the strategic level. The next slide. So looking at this from kind of the strategic level, and then being able to prioritize and identify what's actually needed. What we're showing up here, this is actually Summa's approach to engagements. So what you'll see is that everything is built on top of strategy with what we do. We try to understand what all of the stakeholders need, what their vision is, and then coming up with a picture of what success will look like in the future. From there, we move into discovery, and what ends up happening is we take that vision and build it into a set of user stories. We also then define everything that we need in order to make that vision a reality. And then from there, we build out a roadmap for that. And then we're able to move into the concept of building, where we actually start taking and building out and implementing that roadmap. And then we move into launch. And one of the things that we're very, very big on is the concept of fail fast first. So let's get something out there, an idea, see if it makes sense, and then test and adjust. So what you're also seeing with this is that while everything's built on top of strategy, everything feeds back into strategy as well. So the idea is that we're constantly gathering feedback and understanding, yes, is this working? Do we need to make an adjustment? In the old world, something like this would have taken years. And what we're now seeing is that by doing this, we can actually do this in months. So it's a much more rapid pace. And one of the things that we're also talking about was market viable. And with the next slide, we'll add on to that with another concept from the agile world, which is minimally viable. Minimally viable, despite the name that sounds like maybe we're taking shortcuts, where we're throwing something against the wall and seeing what sticks, it's actually not. It's more about understanding what is important and, again, really applying that fail fast first technique. So the idea is we identify what minimal features are necessary for a viable application. And then what we often do is we release that to a group of early adopters. The early adopters tend to be a little bit more forgiving of some of the rough edges, but they're also the individuals that will provide some of the most valuable feedback. They often have strong opinions, and while they're more forgiving, it doesn't mean that they're any less demanding. And so the idea is that you can test things out in a small microcosm, make some adjustments, and then release for the masses. So some of the other things here on how this is also different than not seeing what sticks. And this is especially important if you are in a B2C environment, is if this is a publicly available application. A negative app store review can really damage your brand and reputation. I'm not going to name any names here, but we've all used mobile applications that have been somewhat substandard to what we're looking for, where it's like, wow, this is exactly what I could have gotten on the website, or even worse, in some cases where they've just taken the website, and now I have to pinch and zoom to try to do anything useful on the application. And unfortunately, I can't because the screen size is so much smaller. This does require design and planning, for minimally viable. Some folks may just sit there and say, let's just build something and see what people like, with no thought given to, well, what is the customer actually trying to do? What do they need? We don't know. We just need a mobile application. Well, that's a good way to waste money. You really want to sit there and start thinking about what you need and what you want to accomplish with your mobile application. Very similar to the early days of the web, where early on advice it was, well, I'll just take all of your printed literature and put it up on the web. And then people started saying, well, why do I need the web if I already have all of the brochures? And then people started making it more interactive. E-commerce came about. Well, that's what we're seeing right now, is people starting to build things out that take advantage of the phone. Next slide. So this is actually an example of an application that actually falls under the minimally viable banner. And this is actually a project that we did with Eaton. And this is where what we did is we sat down and did a vision workshop with them, both with their IT and the line of business, and understood what their vision was and what the goals were for the Power Insight application. And from there, what we did is we actually prioritized what those needs were, came up with the roadmap, and what you're seeing in front of you, this is actually the first release of that. Over time, additional functionality is going to be added to this, probably over a course of 3, maybe 4 releases. So, but the idea here is that able to build an application very, very quickly, get it to market, test it out, and then see where tweaks need to be made along the way, or what additional functionality is necessary. For those of you that are familiar with Agile, this is actually appropriate for not just mobile, but for other applications. But one of the important things about this is that this is not a monolithic application. This is a situation where we can actually build out that minimal functionality, understand what people are using, and then make adjustments. So in the old days, it used to be, we're going to budget for this big, large project, and we get one release, maybe two if we're lucky, in the next 2 years. And then if we're lucky, someone will come back and do some maintenance releases over the next 3 to 5 years. What we're seeing with Agile, especially with mobile, is let's get things to market quicker, get just what we need now, and then see what we need in the future. What we can then do is understand what's working and what's not. And I think that's kind of the important thing here, is that instead of having to get it right 100% the first time and then building a whole bunch of functionality that no one ever uses, what we can do is deliver the functionality that people need when they need it. Next slide. So this is an example of taking design thinking and agile approaches and then applying agile principles to this. So the idea is that we spend that time doing the design, and then what we end up doing is applying a lot of the agile practices. So what you're seeing in the middle here is daily stand-ups to build an application as quickly and effectively as possible without sacrificing quality for this. And the idea, again, is that with that design thinking, we have a good foundation, plus we're constantly going back, as I mentioned before, and understanding what's truly essential and then reprioritizing on a regular basis. Next slide. So just for illustration, some other ways of thinking. Oftentimes what we've seen is kind of 3 other approaches to designing. And we actually used to use some of these as well. It used to be started out with the GUI, and everything was screen focused. But the challenge with that is it missed that end-to-end process. Other approaches we saw where people start out with a model, either a database or some sort of industry standard, and then what ends up happening is people get a tunnel vision and end up making an application that looks exactly like the database model. Oftentimes these are the very, very data-intensive applications, also the applications that are just very difficult and cumbersome to use. Then there's that unhappy medium of middle out, where you kind of start in the middle and say, okay, well, what are the services we're offering? And then let's build applications around that. The challenge with all 3 of these is they forget the entire end-to-end process, as well as understanding what the business truly needs. Now, one of the things that design thinking often does is it requires us to make a lot of changes in how things are being used. And with that then brings us to integration. And I'm going to toss it over to Jeff to talk more about that.
All right, thanks, Jason. Probably one of the most funny things I get out of some of our mobile workshops is seeing the business and the IT departments come together, seeing the business say, in order for this application to be successful, we need data from application X, Y, and Z. And, kind of watching the IT staff have a heart attack in the corner because they realize that getting all that data for the mobile application is going to be a bit of a challenge. So it really has really made an impression on us that integration tends to be one of the harder aspects of mobile application development. Everybody, is maybe concerned about how to jump into mobile, how to design for mobile, how to actually build out a mobile application. That we know how to do that. That's not a problem. The integration is typically the hardest part of the mobile projects. But before we get into that, we're going to throw up another poll question. So we're kind of curious, what mobile platforms have you been developing for today? So please, check all that apply for your organization. And also, we're going to show the results of these poll questions at the end of the presentation so everybody can see how it looks. Okay. So we can go ahead and show the next slide. So if you look across the top of this slide, kind of where we were, if you think back to like the mid 90s, late 90s, people were developing websites. They had a website, and then as HTML5 has come around, some people have made changes and have HTML5 websites. But at that same time, service-oriented architecture was starting to catch a little momentum. Some organizations adopted it, some didn't. Some just didn't quite see the value in it because if the web application tier was the only real user of the service-oriented architecture, maybe it just didn't seem worth the investment. Well, now if you can see, the organizations that did choose to invest in a service-oriented architecture are actually better positioned here going forward to support other channels. So, the mobile web came about. People started having smartphones with better browsers. They wanted to be able to access these websites, but they didn't want the exact same website on a mobile screen. They wanted a website that was optimized for the real estate of a phone or a tablet. And that threw in a lot of different design techniques and responsive design concepts to be able to optimize an application to take advantage of all the real estate that it has. And then as you evolved even further, that's when the mobile apps started to explode, right? And now suddenly maybe the mobile web implementation wasn't as important. Organizations felt more important to have a mobile application so that they had a brand on the Apple App Store, on the Google Play Store, on the Amazon Store. But these mobile apps still needed to get to data, right? They still needed to get to data in the organization and in the back end. So it's really critical to be able to access the service mediation. And really, it's not getting any easier. If anything, it's becoming more complicated because now you have other touch points. You have social media, you have kiosks, you also have the device-to-device type of communication. If you've heard the term Internet of Things, so that your car is reporting data back to central servers, your toaster, your refrigerator. I mean, eventually everything is going to be communicating data back and forth. So having these services be properly exposed so that they can be leveraged across an omni-channel type of environment here is critical for today's business environment. And what those services do is they really encapsulate, the organization's pure reasoning and business logic behind the scenes. So those services access enterprise applications such as CRM, financials, any custom applications. They access mainframes, they access databases, they access messaging queues, rule systems, everything that you can think of. But the organization really needs to try and get as much reuse there as absolutely possible. Next slide. So this is an application that we did for a company called Target. We'll go back. There you go. This was actually an application built for their sales staff. That are typically out in the field, sometimes disconnected. They needed to pull together data from both Salesforce.com, SAP, and Cognos reporting engine. And these are typically systems that are kind of stovepipes from each other. You can write integrations between the two, but independently, they really are stovepipes. So this is a perfect example of where we needed to write an application that brought together data across various portions of the back-end services and try and tie it all together in one unified design. The operator of this application never knows truly if they're dealing with Salesforce data or SAP data or viewing Cognos reports or some other report. They just know that they have an application that has been truly designed for their operational needs, and it maximizes that experience. Next slide. So now, what do you need to know about mobile development platforms? So obviously, there's a lot to consider with mobile development platforms. Obviously, how do you scale your organization from supporting one app today to potentially many, many more apps in the future? Do you select native? Do you select hybrid? So we'll get into all those questions. But first, we have one more poll question here that we want to show you. So just curious, how many mobile applications does your organization have today? So please select a value there.
And while you guys are answering that question, if you guys have other questions that you would like to ask us, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or write a question in the box below.
Okay, great. I think we can close that poll. Next slide. So it's kind of the way that applications are developed for mobile. That you don't tend to have large monolithic apps that have many features. It's much more common to have smaller apps that are very task-based, that have very clean navigation, simple navigation, and err on the side of having more apps rather than having huge apps that do lots of different things. And of course, you need to support, depending upon if you're a B2C target or if you have a B2E target, you need to understand what mobile platforms are you targeting. Obviously iOS and Android pretty much dominate the mobile market, but the BlackBerry and the Windows Phone are stirring, and then you always have the mobile web fallback position. So you really need to consider which of these mobile platforms do you want to target and spend your development resources on. Further, the BYOD, or bring your own device, further compounds this, because not too long ago it wasn't unusual for one organization to say, I'm going to outfit my particular company with a mobile device, and they took the burden of purchasing those devices, and then they owned those devices and they lent them out to the employees. Well, over time, that's really kind of become not quite as popular because, one, more and more people have a smartphone alternative that they can bring and have application and software installed upon them to make them useful for their business needs. But they also have personal assets that they want to keep. They have movies, they have pictures, they have music. And, they maybe were not allowed to do that with corporate corporate device before. So now they needed two phones, potentially. So, but we'll get into more in the security discussion. Next slide. So one of the most popular questions we get whenever we start talking with clients is, native or hybrid? Do we want to support native or do we want to support hybrid? Obviously, native that's the Cadillac option, right? You have the best performing, the slickest user interface, the smoothest transitions, all of that is with native. But that comes with a cost, right? Because with native, really every single mobile platform that you're developing for will be a separate development effort. So in this example here, you see an iOS device and you have an Android device. Really, there is no commonality or very little between the writing, the testing, and the build and deployment of those particular devices. So really, you're looking at it from a development perspective. You need two different skill sets. You need Objective-C and Xcode for the iOS development, and you need Java and the Android SDK and Eclipse for the Android development. And it's a rare thing to find developers that can do both of those. Whereas if you look on the hybrid side, how hybrid works is that you actually develop the application with common web assets. So HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. And those common web assets are then bundled into an application and they run within an embedded web browser within the application. The advantage of this is that, yes, you can find, virtually every company has development resources that are familiar with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, at least much more so probably than Java and Objective-C. And because of it running in an embedded web browser, you have the ability to leverage an implementation across platforms. So the HTML5, the JavaScript, and the CSS that you write in a single code base can be deployed both to an iOS platform here or an Android platform or any other number of platforms. So from a development perspective, that really saves on the development cost because you have a single code base a more common technology set to implement that. And obviously it's simpler to test it as well, because it's going to perform and operate the same on all of those. Now, there are some trade-offs with hybrid. It's not quite as fast as native. It doesn't have quite the look and feel, but it just really depends on what you need to accomplish out of your mobile application. But in our world today, whenever we engage a customer, we really kind of go in thinking, at least initially, that hybrid's probably going to be the right solution unless we learn of some functionality or some feature that is going to drive us away from a hybrid solution to a native solution, just because of the maintainability and the cost perspective. Okay, we'll go to the next question, or next slide, excuse me. So this slide generally greatly scares people, right? This is one organization's Android devices that they had to test their application on for an Android application. If you notice, there's a lot of form factors, there's a lot of different screen real estate sizes, there's a lot of different pixel densities on all these applications and devices. This is kind of where we are with Android, right? To test something and to be reasonably assured that your application is going to run correctly on all of these, obviously is quite an effort. There's an effort, there's a cost involved with if you wanted to purchase this number of devices. Very few organizations would do such a thing. But even so, you need to make an intelligent guess as to say, what are the top manufacturers, what are their top models, and you have to be prepared to realize that those top models they're going to roll over in 6 months, and there's going to be a new set of devices. So there is a significant investment with testing for mobile devices. We could do a similar drawing for Apple, or a similar picture for Apple, and it used to be a lot simpler. It's getting more complicated by the day. And also with the the Windows and the BlackBerry devices, there's a lot of different styles and screen sizes, and it's just something to keep in mind when you're testing this. Next slide. So luckily, there are some vendors that provide virtualized testing so that you don't actually have to purchase all these devices yourself, but you can actually sign up for a service where all of these phones are in a warehouse somewhere, and you actually have a web interface to them where you can check them out, load your application on it, run it remotely, test it, see how it performs, and when you're done, you can uninstall your application, check it, release it back into the pool, and you're good to go. And this is really a helpful thing for it never fails with Android that you're going to get a support ticket for a specific model or device that you've never heard of before or you don't have any experience with. Well, with a feature set like this and a company like this that you can actually reach out and use, it's very, very powerful. Next slide. Okay, so this is an application that we're actively developing for a major furniture company, and basically it's designed to assist their drivers interacting with their back-end systems, which were Salesforce, to be able to get information about where their stops are for the day, what products are going to be delivered at those stops. You have the ability to view product manuals for being able to construct the furniture that you're delivering. There's also an interesting camera component to it, so that the site is inspected prior to delivery, and even after delivery, it's inspected again to show that no damage was created, or if there was damage, we note. You take a picture and you note the damage. And with the stylus or the finger, there are typical points where you get some signatures from the client to make sure that they're agreeing with what's going on. It's really being very, very well received, and it's going to be a real time saver for this company, operational efficiency. Okay, so we'll go back to the other slide here real quick, and we're going to throw up one more poll. basically, we asked previously how many applications do you have today. Well, this question is more geared towards how many applications do you see in the near future, be it maybe a year out or something like that. How many applications do you envision that your organization will need to support? Okay, thank you for that information. We'll go back to the next slide. So obviously, security is very, very important with mobile devices. You have important corporate information, organizational information on that mobile device. It's basically it's become a portal into your back-end systems. You don't want that to fall into, not the proper hands. So how do we combat that? And that's what we'll talk about here. So next slide. So again, really, we're looking to protect the device. We want to protect the device. We want to protect the data and the applications on that device so that we can be assured that only the proper authorized individuals are using that device for the good of the company or the good of the organization. Next slide. So two of the acronyms that really dominate the security landscape today for mobile devices is MAM and MDM. MAM is Mobile Application Management. MDM is Mobile Device Management. So if I can actually start with Mobile Device Management first. This is very much the model for when the organization owns the mobile device asset. So they have the ability to completely control that device. They can control when operating system versions are loaded onto the device over the air. They can control the backup and the restore schedule. They can monitor network usage. They can do the proper security, authentication, and authorization. And they can also install software from it. But the thing is, again, the mobile device management is geared towards they own the device. So if, in fact, you resign from the company or you report the device stolen, they can immediately turn that device into a brick, right? They can make it completely inoperable so that it's of no value to anybody. But that's where a lot of people became upset when they had some personal data on those devices, be it pictures or movies or film or music. So that's actually kind of where the industry has transitioned into mobile application management. So mobile application management really gives you the ability to provision applications and the data that those applications operate on to a device, but they don't own the entire device like they do with MDM. With MAM, they still have their ability to own those particular applications. And there's real sophisticated mechanisms to say, hey, the version of the application you're running is outdated, so the next time you run it, we send you a warning or a notification that says you need to upgrade, or maybe it's more of a gradual upgrade that says, within the next 2 months you're going to need to upgrade to the latest application. Also, mobile application management has the ability to actually set up your own corporate or organizational app stores. So depending upon, let's say you have a sales organization, an HR organization, a finance organization, all within your greater organization, they may very well have different application needs and need to have different applications on their mobile device. You can actually set that up so that when you log into your independent application store, you log in with username, password, things of this nature, and the applications that you see are actually provisioned automatically, and then that will drive what you have access to. They have the ability from these mobile application management stores to control from a blacklist and a whitelist perspective which applications we will not permit to be installed on the device and which applications we will permit to be installed on the device. So definitely in today's world, I think more and more people are moving towards MAM, but MDM absolutely still has its place. Next slide. And finally, the last thing I want to tie together is the mobile enterprise application platform. So this kind of brings it all together, right? So if you look at the left-hand slide, you have enterprise integration. So again, that kind of goes back to our integration slide where you need to interact with all these different systems. You have on the red area the device and the server management security. So that very much ties into the MDM and the MAM discussion. At the bottom, the yellow, that ties into the development tool. So, am I doing HTML5, JavaScript, CSS for my development, or am I doing more Xcode, Objective-C, Android, Eclipse? This is all tied together in the middleware, and being able to then bundle this together and have it all conveniently encapsulated so that the mobile devices on the right-hand side have a dedicated place to come to. They're not reaching into existing web clients. They're not reaching into existing services. They're not reaching into existing databases or things like that. Having this mobile enterprise application platform gives you one central place that all the mobile communication can go through, and then you have the ability to perform better logging, perform better security and shutdown capabilities. Having it centralized is a real advantage, especially as your enterprise goes from supporting one application to supporting potentially 10 to 15 to 100 applications. Having something like this really, really starts to benefit you as you continue to evolve and have more and more applications to support. Okay, next slide. So I think with that, we'll throw it back to Jason.
Thank you very much, Jeff. So I know we've thrown a lot of information at you in the last 45 minutes or so, and we didn't go into a lot of detail on a number of these topics. There's a lot more information available on this and other topics. So I would invite you guys to ask any questions that you have now, but also if you're interested in talking more with us, we can set up time for an executive briefing where we can go through more of these topics in detail. For instance, if you'd like to learn more about mobile enterprise application platforms or mobile device management, application management, design thinking, any one of those topics, we can work with you to go through a deeper dive on any of those topics. Additionally, next slide. We can also, if you're interested, if you are just getting started with mobile, an offering that we have with Summa is the ability to do a mobile strategy workshop series. This is a series of workshops that are designed to help you understand where you want to go with mobile, the importance of mobile to your organization, and then identify the first set of projects or a specific project in particular. There's also the Summa Ignite mobile offering, which is a rapid prototyping engagement where we can actually help design and mock up and create a touchable prototype in about a week for a mobile application. So if you're interested in learning more about any of the topics you saw today or any of these things, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And here's the email address and phone number that you can use to call and talk to us. We will also be making a replay of this webcast available within the next few days. And so, if there's part of it you want to go back and rewatch, definitely, or if you know someone that may be interested in hearing about this, you'll be able to share that with them. And with that, we'll turn it over to questions. And while we're waiting for the questions to come in, we'll also share with you the results of the poll. So it looks like a lot of folks are looking for real-time access to information, followed by increased revenue and ROI. So really looking for new market opportunities by the looks of that, or getting a better return on investment. And then it looks like also coming in third place is the increased employee productivity. And as I suspected, no one is doing anything for Windows or BlackBerry. It is iOS and Android all the way. Okay, it looks like most of you are starting to look at mobile applications, and a few of you have one or two out there today as well. And it looks like everyone is targeting between 1 and 5 within the next 12 months or so. Okay, do we have any questions out there? Okay, it looks like there are no questions, so we will go ahead and wrap up. Thank you very much for your time today.